Coast's most accurate forecast from the First Coast News Weather Team, certified by Weather Rate, sponsored by AC Designs.
Well, Tim, despite spring having sprung the last several weeks, can we say maybe summertime like weather is here?
I think at least as long as you say summer like, it's sure.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't feel like it today, it's certainly heading that way. I know that I've already taken my 2 walks around the building, and yeah, it's feeling like beyond just the summer warmth. That is for sure. With those milky skies, what do we call it? A weakening ridge or a dirty ridge? What do you think?
I like the term dirty ridge.
Okay.
I think that tells a story pretty well.
Yeah, it's because it's a sign of all that stuff that was out west, but it's not really the storm system heading our way, right? It's just sort of the debris. It's
just the remnants of it, kind of.
But it can make it here because that ridge is weaker. Stuff can't go up over the top of it.
And it's really all of those high clouds. So the high-level cirrus clouds are what's kind of left over from that stuff well off to the west. And then you just have a little bit of some cumulus, popping off there from some of the daytime heating, but not a ton out there here.
No, and certainly not any vertical development. But maybe, just maybe, we're going to start seeing a little more vertical development, at least for some spots, right, as we go through the week?
Yeah, some inland areas, Swanee Valley, Okefenokee Swamp, perhaps, could be two spots we'll highlight here as we head throughout the rest of the week. Here's another way to look at it, so you can kind of see the two different cloud decks.
Yeah.
So those little polka dots, that's the low-level clouds, some of those cues starting to just kind of bubble up here in the afternoon hours. And then those high-level clouds kind of streaming in from southwest to northeast. That is from the dirty ridge that you heard Tim mention there. But pretty warm out there for a lot of folks, Tim. I believe Cecil was up close to 90.
Wow.
That's not showing on here.
But that is a type of week it's going to be, to where this time of the year record highs are more like 91 to 94. Mm-hmm. But maybe some spots, especially Cecil out toward Highway 301 westward, maybe especially out toward I-75, they might see some temperatures approaching record levels. I know that our friends down in Tampa, because they're going to have a more prevailing easterly wind, which means for them they don't get the sea breeze, that they're wondering if they're going to be approaching record temperatures almost every day this week.
But I think it's safe to say for Jacksonville specifically, we are not going to hit record high temperatures here. Most of our days will be in the mid to upper 80s. But you talk about the sea breeze a little bit, that Tampa's not going to be seeing it much this week. Pretty much just passing through downtown here right now, Tim.
Yeah, it's the east side of our building, which is feeling the breeze, feels pretty good. West side, pretty toasty out there. Now that is for our fellow forecasters out there. That's because if you notice out to the west, you can see it's a light flow, but it is out of the southwest. And so that will be where we'll be looking for that sea breeze convergence. So just a little more lift to get those cumulus clouds some vertical development. And as forecasters, that's what we're going to be looking at. Where will that sea breeze convergence be during the heat of the day as we go through, especially Tuesday through Friday? And that's interesting down over northeastern Putnam, Ross. I wonder if that's a fire.
Yeah, so when I had looked at this earlier, it had looked like it was just perhaps a little shower trying to pop up there. But no, I definitely think it's actually a fire. Mm-hmm. So your smoke plume there just right along the St. Johns River in northeast Putnam County.
But as far as we know, that's nothing that's getting out of control. But certainly it's, where Central and South Florida have been much drier than us, we are starting to get pretty crispy up here.
Yeah, very much so. Especially for, the day after Easter.
Yeah.
Especially, I just came back from Pennsylvania where we had a couple mornings down in the 40s, some nice afternoons in the 60s and 70s. So coming back last evening and then even out there today, not just the temperature itself, but the humidity was like a shock to the system, and not really in a good way.
I think we should share, though, a positive.
Okay.
And that you found out that you were the favorite uncle this weekend.
I was the flavor of the weekend. And who knows that will continue?
Well, you go with what you can get. Now, what was your official title?
Uncle Was.
Uncle Was. Perfect.
Yeah. Uncle Was, my 2.5-year-old niece. She'll get the name right eventually. Maybe I'll just change it to Was.
I think Was sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
Was Mummah. That sounds pretty good. All right, on a more serious note, unfortunately, we did hear that there was a drowning yesterday at Hanna Park. Of course, to me, that's, always a tragedy when a family's out there having a good time and then there's a drowning. We do know what happened in the ocean. We don't know specifically what happened. So we don't know if the rip current risk is what occurred. But at the very least, the point we want to make, folks, is that yes, there was a rip current yesterday. There's a rip current today, but it's really not stormy. It's not a violent rip current. I was in the water myself yesterday. There was really more of a side shore current because we're starting to get more of that southeast to southerly sea breeze event developed during the afternoon. So there's more of a current going south to north, but it's strong enough to where it can knock you off your feet, maybe from a shallow sandbar to deeper water. And then there were some rips taking people out, but again, not super strong. But I could see how, especially if you're not comfortable with the water, it might cause you to panic. Anyhow, this is our way of saying certainly our condolences, but also the idea that Hanna Park and elsewhere, there's lots of lifeguards these days, especially on the weekends because the summer routine is pumping up. And so for family members, don't hesitate to go right where the lifeguards are because they get to give the adults advice. They also get to keep a close watch on people. Now, maybe in this case, a lifeguard couldn't have helped, but it's just a reminder as that water's getting warmer, Ross. Now we're up to 74 in the surf temperature, 77 in the river, more and more people getting in the water. And on weekends tends to be sometimes mixed with not necessarily just water, and sometimes that can cause an issue. But anyhow. Yeah. Just a reminder that I think actually, and when we see those high rip current risks, very often that occurs when it's stormy. And it's important that we put those out, but very often when it's stormy, a lot of us aren't getting in the water, right? But on days like yesterday where it was very nice, there was just a strong current because of the sea breeze, there were a lot of people in the water. And of course, that just heightens the potential. And it's going to be that kind of a week. It's not going to be there's not going to be big surf. But there will be rip current risks. So, our advice is take advantage of those lifeguards that are out there.
Yeah, and that's for both Tuesday and Wednesday, and as you said, through most of the week here, Tim. But
we're getting closer. Wow.
Yeah, we're going to focus or stay on kind of the coast and the water. You see right there, 41 days now until hurricane season. So, as I mentioned, I've been off the last couple days, but Tim, you mentioned the last week, what one?
April 17th it came out.
Yeah, so the Climate Prediction Center puts out kind of these monthly and seasonal outlooks for average temperature, whether it's going to be below or above, not only for temperature but also for precipitation as well. So it just kind of gives you a climatological idea of what could perhaps happen. What could the trend be weather-wise as you head either through a 1-month period, a 3-month period, or just the season itself. So it did extend as far out as, July, August, September, the heart of hurricane season here, Tim. So I know you kind of broke it down here for me earlier. I'm going to give you the chance now to kind of explain what some of the long-range telecommunications are kind of showing here.
Okay. So thank you, Ross, and I appreciate it. And folks, to let you know how very iffy and general this is, I even asked Ross, do you want to talk about it? Because unless everyone really listens to what we're saying, it can look more specific than it is. It's just another attempt to get a general idea, especially because we've all heard Colorado State, from our own National Weather Service and others, what the outlook would be. A lot of that discussion tends to be on El Nino or La Nina or neutral, which is in between, or the ocean temperatures. So I'm just trying to take it from that position, that being that once the tropical cyclone forms, where might they go? And so for you weather freaks out there, what I'm really trying to draw here is a mean or an average of what the 500 millibar flow will be. That is about 18,000 feet. So this is just to give you a comparison. What we would love to see is a flow like this, because this would cause, first of all, below normal temperatures, and dry weather. Now, even that itself is not necessarily good news. I'm just focused hyper on what about tropical cyclones. So this is the kind of flow you want, because with that type of flow, as an average over our busiest 3 months, wouldn't mean that every tropical cyclone would recurve, but it would mean that the odds are, especially the big ones forming in the Atlantic and maybe the Eastern Caribbean, they would cause them to be recurved. And an example of that is we've had active hurricane seasons where 80% of the hurricanes are forced to recurve over the Atlantic. So you can have an active season without them coming to land. But although this is what we would like to see happen, this is, again, folks, just an overall average. We're talking about 3 months, and there's going to be all kind of varieties. But it looks like the 500 millibar flow, the 18,000 foot flow, as an average, would indicate a trough and maybe a pretty energized one over the Midwest. And what I mean by energized, notice as instead of it necessarily opening up to the Northeast, which is what you'd expect, maybe almost some occasional cutoffs, and that produces a little more concern on the eastern seaboard. But I don't want to get too specific. But with this type of flow, there would be a tendency for Atlantic hurricanes to head toward the East Coast. Now, notice that arrow kind of points toward North Carolina. That's not me saying that North Carolina is going to get nailed. That's just me pointing out that under this type of pattern, as an average, there would be more tropical cyclones. Instead of recurving, they would be heading toward the eastern seaboard. At the same time, and this would be pretty incredible because we've had 2 record-breaking years of eastern Gulf of Mexico hurricanes that then go up and affect the eastern Gulf and what I call the northeast Gulf, which means our neck of the woods, would indicate a pattern that would pull them northward as opposed to sending them, keeping them deep into Central America. So again, folks, we're not saying that we're going to be hit this year at all. I'm just saying that if you had a wish, this is not the type of pattern you would wish for. So that's it, Ross. I guess I wouldn't mind finishing with the fact that, again, whereas 2 years ago was active, last year was even more active, and that had major implications for Waycross, which is you're heading up there tomorrow, right?
Yeah, so we got our annual hurricane special that airs, I believe, on June 1st. So I'm doing a story up there in Waycross. I kind of talk about the impacts that were seen and felt during Hurricane Helene late last September. So that story will be in the works and will be out to you folks by the end of May or the start of June. But I think perhaps really just the key thing to remember is, we expect storms to form. The water temperatures are warmer. There is more moisture and energy available for these storms to develop. It's really just where will they go once they do form, and you kind of had that there at the start of this little explainer. So we thank you for that, Tim. We will continue to keep a watchful eye on it leading up until hurricane season, and of course all through hurricane season. But don't have to worry about any hurricanes or storms, at least here tonight. Temperatures after sunset.
Won't need the heater either.
Yeah, you're not going to need the heater because they're not cooling off all that much.
Not much.
Only down into the mid 60s. We're going to keep a lot of the cloud cover. Now, I want to emphasize it's not going to be a thick cloud deck, at least lower at the surface. Those low clouds. That's not what we're expecting. Just a lot of high clouds kind of mixed in with some mid and low level ones. So it shows mostly cloudy, but it's really not going to be like a blanket kind of over the first coast. Well, all I'm trying to say is no clear skies tonight and a muggy, kind of mild evening. Our average low is like 57, 58 degrees for this time of the year, so we're going to be anywhere from about 5 to 10 degrees warmer than that, especially for Jacksonville. Some inland locations, this is showing slightly cooler, but overall, this is a pattern we perhaps see more so in June rather than in the start, or I should say, I guess the latter portion of April here now.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, tomorrow, milky skies. They're continuing. Temperatures still back into at least the mid 80s, if not the upper 80s. Some of our inland locations, especially west of Highway 301, could push up close to 90 degrees. So although we don't expect near record temperatures for Jacksonville, some inland areas like Stark, Lake City, even Sanderson and McClenny perhaps, Lake Butler even, could see some of those temperatures inching a little bit closer to some of those record highs. So we'll see just how warm some isolated spots do actually get. And talking about isolated, Tim, only a few isolated rain chances here throughout most of this week. Tomorrow, we're pretty much thinking the Swanee Valley and the Okefenokee for the best chance to see perhaps just a few raindrops coming in as that sea breeze works its way on through here. So this is just what one model is trying to show. By late tomorrow afternoon and into the early evening, you can kind of see where that convergence zone is up through Baker County, Charlton, and almost right over top of Waycross.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of moisture at the at the surface. We'll see if we get any of those isolated showers or not. But for folks out towards Lake City and then northward up across inland southeast Georgia, probably going to have the best chance to see at least a few isolated showers tomorrow. For Wednesday, probably a little bit further north, Tim, mainly just southeast Georgia there for Wednesday, you're thinking?
Yeah, and I think what might be sort of counterintuitive to some folks is that as we go through the week and this little shortwave trough that gets east of us, and so then we should have less cirrus clouds. So as we have less clouds, we may actually have a higher chance of some of those showers becoming isolated thunderstorms, and that's just because we'll get a little more heat into the scenario, right?
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. So, but at least for Jacksonville, and I would just say maybe the whole metro as a whole. I mean,
pretty dry, probably.
Yeah, maybe a 5 or 10% chance at most.
This is really our way of just letting you folks in southeast Georgia and the Swanee know that we do think about you. If we didn't, we would simply say, what would we say, Ross? We would say warming and more humid, but still dry. But that would be the metro. But we're trying to, of course, focus on what's happening farther west and northwest also.
Yes. And honestly, the biggest and key takeaway here from the whole week is really just the temperatures and the humidity, pretty relentless through the end of April here. There's a look at what the actual record highs are for Jacksonville. So we are going to be more than a stone's throw away from each of those every single afternoon. It does look like Wednesday, Saturday, very, very warm. Real field temperatures will probably be something we start to talk about as we get some of those temperatures into the upper 80s, close to 90. Real field's pushing up into the mid to upper 90s here, Tim.
I liked how you put that, though, because you started off with relentless, which really sounded oppressive to me. But then you made the point that the records are still a stone's throw away. So that's I like it. Put well.
Above average temperatures, at least.
Yeah, but anybody can say that. I'd keep your relentless and stone throwing. Although you can probably throw a stone farther. Can you skip stones? Are you a good stone skipper?
I'd have to warm myself up first. Warm up the old shoulder.
Now here though is a point, folks, and we're certainly not talking about wind chill, but in the 6th to 7th day portion of our outlook, we will be reminded that as much as the warmth is relentless, it doesn't mean that at least fronts won't be approaching us, because it is spring, and we will have fronts approaching us, especially probably late Sunday and Monday. Now notice we're not necessarily saying going to push through, but at least they'll approach, especially as we get into Sunday and Monday.
Yeah, and
but once again, another major rain event out west, though.
And that's kind of the point I was trying to make is there are still fronts around. They're just off to our northern fringe by a good bit. So areas like Atlanta to Birmingham to Nashville, Memphis, they will see rain chances. And then yes, especially the southern and central plains, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, even Nebraska, will have multiple rain chances, and that's kind of when you start to move into that portion of the year for that part of the country where you get kind of the dry line moving in off of the the high plains off to the west. So
because they had a big event over the weekend as far as storms and rain out there, and it's more coming back.
Yeah, I know. I think eastern Oklahoma had some damage, and I think the Dallas metroplex also saw some tornado damage down there. So there is moisture and rain and storms around. It is just going to kind of stay away from us. So at least when you look at the Weather Prediction Center, rain chances, not a whole lot on the way, less than a quarter inch for almost everyone here. And
since you said quarter of an inch, we're if we're not there already, we're right about to where we're probably evaporating off about a quarter of an inch of rain per day.
I noticed, this is kind of on topic still, but the retention pond out in front of here, I think they're using it for something with regards to the construction downtown.
Yeah.
But they've lost a lot of water.
Yeah, but yes, that is primarily construction.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
But even like, it just made me think of that when I drove into it.
But other retention ponds.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know, like, I have a ditch that often fills with water when it rains and storms, and you and I have talked about that.
So Enzo doesn't have like water to get into right now?
No, I mean,
wow.
it's starting to look pretty dry down in there. So not a whole lot of relief on the way. If you're planting your posies or your gardens, I heard, Tim, you had a pepper plant?
Have a pepper plant that...
You're going to have to continue to water that here.
The great thing about that particular pepper plant is it's in a pot, and that's the best kind of plants for me.
The ones you don't have to
Tim, just
upkeep.
don't do anything to it. Yeah, but yeah, my other plants, my bougainvilleas like dry weather, occasional dry weather like this. I've learned that over the years to bougainvillea likes the variation. I used to kill them because I'd water them too much. But yeah, the other ones are getting to where they need it. So that's sort of a classic 7-day to show you folks that more warmth and moisture on the increase. But notice we're not talking about a washout. And notice even Sunday and Monday that although the front is approaching because it looks like it's going to produce more of a land breeze or more of a wind out of the west, unless it actually gets down here, might actually cause metro temperatures to become even hotter.
Lucky us. Can't wait. So he is Chief Meteorologist Tim Deegan. I'm Meteorologist Ross Mummah. Appreciate you guys tuning in. We will have much more for you coming up on First Coast News at 5. But until then, stay cool out there, stay hydrated, and take care, folks. Have a good one.